Hey guys, welcome to my Delray bee yard. Now, what you see here, this is my Colorado bee vacuum. So that black tube you see there, that's where my hose hooks up. And it's just like a little storage cage. And what you do is when you vacuum the bees up from a swarm or wherever you rescue them from, you place the bottom side of this bee vac on top of a bee box. And what happens is the bees will be transferred out of the cage into the bee box. So this was my first swarm that I captured and installed in Delray. This is the one where the homeowner actually tried to spray the bees and kill them. And then after he realized that they weren't dead, he called me to come out and get them. I was so annoyed with them, I charged them $75 to come out. So as you can see, I have them here, and what they're doing, they're building comb on the outside of the nest. So basically what I had to do was eliminate some of the frames because they were just too small for a 5 framer. So what I did, I actually left 2 frames in there. I took out 4 frames and I left 2 frames in there, and that's how I started them. So just want to give you a burst of my Delray bee yard. This is actually my first hive that I installed there, and now I have 2 hives down in my Delray bee yard. So altogether I have 6 hives. And I think 10 is going to be my max. I don't have 10 yet, but I just don't have time with a full-time job to tend to more than 10 hives. And most of the work is in getting them going. So here is an update now on the future Delray bee yard, and I have a special guest with me today. That's my younger sister, Paula. She's helping me with the bee yard down in Delray. So as you can see, she's standing in front of that very same box that we were just looking at, and then to the right of her is my second colony. So I'm showing her how to go down inside of the bee box, how to smoke through the top, because what she was doing was just feeding the bees for me. So she've never handled the hive tube or opened up the top where she took off the feeder top from it to go inside. So this will be her first time, and I'm kind of walking her through it, how to do it. So you can see now from the beginning of this video how these bees have actually grown from a lump in the side of the follower board. They were actually making comb on the opposite side of the follower board. So what I did, I took some of the frames out and just made a 3 frame. So you'll see right here, I'm sliding the follower board down so we can inspect the frames. Now, this is about a month or maybe more than a month, maybe a month and a half, 2 months. So we're smoking them now because there are a lot more bees in there. They actually have 3 full frame of bees on both sides. And when we finish this inspection, I'm actually going to add 3 more frames to it. So I'm separating the frames from each other and explaining to my sister about the propolis that the bees use to glue the frames together. So I'm pulling out a brand new frame gripper to show her how to use the frame gripper, and also how she can use her 2 hands if she want to use her hands. So first I'm demonstrating the frame gripper, how to remove the frames. And you'll see why I don't like that frame gripper. See, oops, it almost slipped. The bees got a little cranky there, but they actually settled back down. So just take a look at this nice frame of bees. That's why it's important to feed your bees, because as you can see, they actually grew from 1.5 frame of bees into 3 frame of bees. So right there, I have 3 frames of brood, front and back. So now if I don't add more frames to this, they'll probably try to swarm on me. They'll start building swarm cells. So I'm pointing out to my sister how to find the queen, how you let your eyes circle around the edge of the frames, and then you bring your eyes back into the middle where the bees are. Because usually if the queen is on the edge, she'll do a quick run to the other side of the frame because she doesn't like the light. So we're looking around for the queen. And I actually didn't find the queen in here, but we saw eggs, so that's all we need to do. You don't actually have to see the queen every time you go in the box. As long as you see eggs, fresh eggs that's standing straight up in the cell, that means the queen was actually there today. Now, if you see eggs and they're tilted a little bit, that's like a 2-day-old egg. And if it's laying down, that's like a 3-day-old egg. It'll lay down into a C shape. So I'm trying to show her how to use the sunlight to look for eggs, because if you notice, these 2 hives are in the shade. So we're actually going to walk away for a minute. And I went out with the frame into the sun to show her how to use the sun to angle the frames where the sunlight is down in the cell and you can actually see if there's eggs in the cell. Now, this is the second frame, and as you can see, this frame is loaded with bees. That frame is full of bees, front and back. Now, the thing is, if I hadn't started feeding them, they probably wouldn't have made it. They didn't have enough foragers to go out and bring in resources so that the queen can lay eggs. So we're going to walk away into the sun. We'll be back. So this is the only spot I could find. So as you can see, we're like 15 feet away from the property line. When you get your new beehives, that's one of the rules. You can't have your beehives right up against the property line. You have to be at least 15 feet away from the property line. And you also need to have some water sources out for your bees. So if you look in that box, you can see bees all over those frames. And we were using the Burns feeder board to feed the bees with. I like the Burns feeder board because the feed is inside of the jars. When you use the top feeders, the inside feeders, the ants have access to your sugar syrup. The hive beetles have access to it. But when you put it in the bottles and you put the top on it, only the bees have access to the sugar syrup. So that's one of my reasons for using the Burns feeder board, but I have used them all and they have their advantages and disadvantages. And also, this spot is a little too shady. But anyway, I was able to get the hive beetles under control, even though those two hives are in the shade. So, what I actually had to do was sprinkle some diatomaceous earth around the hives, and then I sprinkled some grub X around those two hives. And what I noticed is that the hive beetles disappeared quickly. But when I first put them in there, I was kind of afraid and worried. The first time I went back to do an inspection, it was like so many hive beetles in there, and they were in the wax cells, just having their way. They were going in and out, and I was panicking. I was like, oh no, this hive is going to be destroyed. So when I came back with my ammunition, diatomaceous earth, and Grub-X. And when I sprinkled that, and then the next inspection I done, I didn't hardly see any hive beetles in that hive. So thankfully that worked out for me. And these are things that you need to learn if you're going to be doing beekeeping. You want to be the best beekeeper that you can be, not a lazy beekeeper. You know, as I was told when I first started, there's beekeepers and there's bee havers. So you don't want to be labeled as a bee haver. That's a person that has bees in a box, don't know what to do with them, don't know anything about them, too lazy to educate themselves. So they're on every bee forum with a picture of their cells saying, oh, what is this problem? What's going on here? What are my bees doing? There's nothing wrong with that. But when it's an easy question that you should know, then people, they start getting mad at you and giving you sarcastic answers because in their mind, that's something you should know from educating yourself. Of course, you're not going to know everything when you first start, so you can ask questions on bee forums. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you are too lazy to learn anything and you're on the forum every day asking simple little petty questions, then that's when people get mad at you because you're taking up their time and space. But you know, there are some people that's patient and they'll keep answering your questions. But I just want you to be the best beekeeper that you can be without having to ask questions. Learn your bees because everybody's bees are different. There's no set of bees that are the same. And I can tell you the bees in my Delray bee yard, they're going to behave different from the bees that's on my property. For one thing, the bees on my property, they're in direct sunlight. The bees that are down here, they're in the shade. So the bees on my property, I didn't have to put down Grub-X and diatomaceous earth because they're in direct sunlight, which the hive beetles don't like. So that was my remedy for getting rid of the hive beetles. And if you look at this frame here I'm holding, this is a brand new frame. When I put that in the box, there was no wax on it, just the wax that I painted on it for the bees to build it out. And now look, they build it out and they have brood on both sides of that. So that box right there is full of bees, 3 frames full. So I'm explaining to her how to be gentle when you're putting the frames back in. You don't want to be pinching bees. Because if you pinch bees and the bees start to smell the pheromones from dead bees, they start to get cranky because they realize bees are being killed. And then they don't want you in the hive. They realize you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing. So you don't want to pinch bees. But they still get pinched. So don't feel bad if a couple get pinched, because they don't always move out of the way. They just run right into that spot where they can get squashed, pinched, or killed. So if you kill a couple, just keep moving. You know, they only last so long, and they're gonna die in about 40 days. So you just, help them die a little early. My sister was actually complaining that she was hot in this outfit. And all she has is a long sleeve shirt and gloves and a veil. If she think that's hot, she need to wait till the summer come, when you're standing in direct sunlight with no shade. Man, it gets brutal sometimes. Sometimes when I come out of the bee yard, my undershirt is just water, it's just soaked. But hey, I love it. That's all part of beekeeping. Yeah, so I went out to the truck to get the extra frames that I have. So if you're wondering what's going on here, so here we go. We have the extra frame. So what I would like to do is, you always want to keep your brood nest together. Don't put blank frames in between. So if you notice, I'm putting one on the end, and then the other one will go on the opposite end, because they have 3 frames of brood. So you want to keep the brood in the middle. So I'm making a little room here for the next frame to go on the edge. So those frames that I'm putting in, those are drawn out comb. They have drawn out comb on them already. So it won't take the bees long to increase the size of the colony, because they don't have to make cells for the queen to lay in. Once I get those in there and the bees clean them out, the queen can actually start laying in them right away. And then I'll give them about maybe 7 to 10 days, and I'll go back down and do another inspection. So that's my follower board on the end. And what that follower board does is, it tells the bees that that's the end of the nest. So they kind of stay in between the follower boards and the side of the box. And then I have one more. This is a frame that doesn't have any comb on it. Yeah, just give them something to do. They can build that out. They'll have enough resources. So before you know it, this will turn into a 10 frame box quickly. And when they turn into a 10 frame box, I want to treat them for mites, do a mite count, and then probably around March, when the season starts to get rolling next year, I'll throw a honey super on it once the nectar flow begins. So having a successful honey harvest, it actually starts from the year before, preparing your bees, feeding them, building them up, taking care of them, keeping the mites under control so that they can be prosperous when the nectar flow begins the following year. And if you look at those bees, you can see how they have the top of the frames covered up already. There's a lot of bees in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to slide all of those frames tighter, and we're going to put the follower board up, getting the bees out of the way so they don't get pinched, because we're going to be sliding the frames right up against the edge of the box there. And then we're going to push all the frames close together, and we're going to put the follower board at the end, and that'll be it for this inspection. Then we'll go to the next box. So if you notice, I'm being nice to my sister. I gave her my veil that has the window that you can see out of her. If you notice, I have a veil that doesn't have a window. So that's just another veil I brought, just to do quick inspections. I wouldn't wear that out with rowdy bees. Well, you know me, I probably would, but if I have bees that are rowdy and defensive, I usually wear my bee suit, just the jacket top. If I'm going to collect swarms, I'll wear my full bee suit, because you never know what kind of swarm you're going to collect. If it's well, I don't wear it, I bring it along. And when I engage the swarm, I see how they respond. If they respond defensively, then I'll go grab my full bee suit and put it on. But usually I'll have my jacket, because you always want to be prepared. Don't play around with bees. They have stingers and they will sting you. Don't be like the people that you see on YouTube. I just get so upset with them when I see people out there with bare hands and no veils. All it takes is a stinger to the eye to put you out of commission, and people are just willing to chance that just to make a YouTube video. But me, I take things seriously. Whatever I do, I always follow the safety rules. I'm not cutting corners when it comes to safety, because you get a sting in the eye, that's a lot of trouble for you. A sting on the hand is not that bad, but it makes you look kind of goofy when you go out there bare hand and it takes a couple of stings on the hands for you to say, oh, I'm going to get my gloves because the bees are stinging me. I just look at that and I go, duh, they have stingers. You knew that. Before you started looking in the hive, you should already have your gear on. So this hive is pretty much back together. We just need to put the feeder board back on top. I'm not going to feed them anymore, but since I had this last jar of feed, I told my sister just give them that last jar so they can bill out that empty frame that I put in there. And then after that, I'm going to stop feeding them. Why? Because while I was in there, I was looking for resources. And they had plenty of resources in there. Whether it was my sugar water that I give them, I don't know, but they have nectar in there. They had pollen. They had bee bread. And so, the best feed for bees is the natural feed, pollen and nectar from nature. We just step in when they need help. And once they get going, you step out of the way and let nature takes its course. You don't want to be feeding your bees all the time and they become lazy. Yeah, you want them to go out naturally on the plants to pollinate, for one. All of the fruits that are out in the environment, you want them to go out and pollinate them. And you want them to go out and collect nectar and bring it back to the bee naturally. That's what they were created to do. And so you see my firm number on the side of my box. The bee inspector told me wherever I start another bee yard, I always need to have my numbers on the box in case anybody try to report me. They'll know that I'm a registered beekeeper. So when you sign up to become a beekeeper, it's only $10 for the certificate. They'll come out, inspect your hives, make sure you don't have any diseases or your bees are not sick, and make sure you have water out in the yard for the bees. If not, they'll be in people's swimming pool trying to get chlorinated water. So that's what I put in my water. I give them a teaspoon of salt or less and a couple drops of chlorine bleach in my water. And that's to a quart bottle. And that's what I feed them for water in the summertime. So they don't have to go in people's pool to collect water. All right, now this next hive, this is my second hive. I brought this from my yard on my property because I had 4 hives down there, so I needed to remove one. So I brought one down here and then I captured a swarm and put it here. So in my Delray yard, I have 2 hives for the moment, and I'll be adding one more as soon as I capture another swarm, or if I want to graft another colony off of the genetics that I have in my original bee yard that's on my property. Because what you want is good genetics in your bee yard. You want gentle bees that's not aggressive. And you want bees. I gave them the name go-getters. They're like always on the go. Every time you stand in front of that hive and you see those bees, they're like in and out, in and out. They are just going so fast. They're bringing in nectar, bringing in pollen, bringing in nectar, bringing in pollen. And it's like they don't stop. They're from sun up and sun down. You see them in and out of the box. And then I look at the other colonies and they're not doing that. So that's one thing I noticed about that colony I had. So that's why I wanted to graft some other queens off of that colony. So right now I just grafted one colony off of that queen genetics. So I'm waiting to see this swarm here in my Delray yard. I need them to get a little bigger because when they're small, they don't have a lot of guard bees. So you really can't tell how defensive and aggressive they may be. But when you get that bottom brood box filled and maybe a honey super on there, and you get a good amount of guard bees, then you can get an idea of if they're going to be aggressive, they just doing their job, or you need to euthanize them. So yeah, right now they seem to be good bees. My sister hasn't complained that they're at the door or stinging anybody. But yeah, if you have bees that's flying around stinging the pets and stinging people, and you can't go within 10 foot of the hive, yeah, you don't want those genetics like that. They'll get you in trouble with the neighbors. And you don't want to be in trouble with the neighbors. So yeah, there's a couple of bees on here. They're storing nectar. So before I went on my trip, I put that yellow box on top, and then that had 10 frames of drawn out comb. So what I'm doing is I want to see how they do in a double deep. Because normally I keep them in a single deep. So the only thing about a double deep is you now have 20 frames to inspect and look for a queen versus 10 frames. But there's a lot of things you can do also with the double deep. Like you can take the top box off, put a bottom board on it, put a telescopic cover on it, and you can make another hive. And they'll take one of the young larvae and raise a queen. And all she has to do is go out and get mated, and you'll have another colony. And that's called a split. You can split your colonies from a double brood box, or you can do it with a double screen board. And that was the method that I use in my bee yard that's in my residence. I used a double screen board to graft the queen and made another colony from her genetics. So in this box, the bees are occupying. I was going to take it off. I just wanted to see if they were going to utilize it because, the winter solstice is upon us. So the nights will be getting longer and the days will be getting shorter. So what happened is the queen slows down her egg laying. But down here in Florida, we don't have that winter thing that goes on during the winter solstice. So this frame here, the queen came up and laid some brood in it. If you look real closely, you'll see brood in the middle. And I was letting my sister feel it to see the difference when you pick up an empty frame and when you pick up a frame that has nectar in it and brood. So now I'm showing her how to actually hold it with your hand and flip it around to do an inspection where you don't have to use the frame gripper. I think using your two hands like that to hold it is a lot better, but I'm just used to the frame gripper. So yeah, there wasn't a lot of bees up there. Well, there was a few, but it's not as much as I wanted to be up there because there's a lot of bees in that bottom box. So what I'm going to do when I go back down to do an inspection, if they haven't come up, I'm going to take a few frames of open brood and put them up in the top box, and then I'll put a couple frames of drawn comb down below for the queen to lay in. Now, when you do that, here's something you want to pay attention to. You never want to separate more than 2 frames of brood. You don't want a checkerboard brood. You can, but it's not a good idea to do it. But if you do want to checkerboard the brood box, at least keep 2 frames of brood together, then put a drawn comb, 2 more frames of brood together, and a drawn comb on the outside of that. That's just different ideas, different things you can do that you have to learn. Don't just take my word for it. You have to find out what works for your bees. Sometimes you have to checkerboard your honey super because you have those inventory bees that like to instigate swarms. They'll go around and look at all the resources and they'll say, oh, we got plenty of resources here. Hey, queen, let's go. It's time to make another colony. And they'll force the queen to swarm. They'll keep nudging her and bothering her and bouncing her and letting her know, hey, it's time to go. We need to make another colony. So you have to learn how to do swarm management, because when March comes around and the bees pick up and the time changes again, and then we are headed towards the summer solstice where the days are getting longer, the queen will start laying a lot of eggs. So your colonies will grow faster. And if you don't pay attention, right before the nectar flow, they'll swarm on you. And that's the time you don't want them to swarm, because when the nectar flow starts, you want a full colony to bring in resources so you can have a great honey harvest. If you let your bees swarm right before the honey harvest, you're not going to have a great honey harvest because half of your bees left. So you need a good field force that goes out and brings in a lot of nectar. So that's something you have to pay attention to with beekeeping. Every year you got to watch your bees so they don't swarm. You have to do swarm management all the time, because in Florida our bees they go year round, because we don't have much of a winter where they go in and just chill because it's too cold. No, it's sunny down here in South Florida, and I'm way down in the South. You know, Florida is a peninsula, and we have three different environments in Florida. You got the northern part of Florida, which they have a winter. And then you got the central part of Florida. They are like in between. They have a little bit of winter, a little bit of summer. And then you got the southern part of Florida where we don't have any winter at all. You may get a cold snap once in a while. Temperature drops down to like 40, which ain't considered cold to me at all. And then the next day it's like 70 degrees. So you figure the bees love that. So yeah, we don't get any 20s and 0 degrees where the bees have to stay in. So yeah, we might get cold at night, but the next day the sun comes up and it warms everything back up. So I hope that you have learned something from this video. You know, that's my purpose and reasons of making videos. I realize we don't have a lot of beekeepers down in South Florida that does videos other than Rich with South Florida Beekeeping down in Tamarack. And if you ever run across this video, Rich, I appreciate you very much and all the videos that you make and some of the things that I've actually learned from your videos. And keep on making videos, because we got to support the beekeepers down here in South Florida, because the beekeepers up north, it's a totally different environment. The basics are the same, but we don't have to put our bees up for winter and wrap the hives. And we don't have to use sugar bricks in the winter. We use syrup all year round. So we will see our bees slow down at some point, but it will be later in the year, around like maybe November, December. I think around about September up north, the guys start packing it in after the fall harvest. But us, I think if we don't get a winter, we don't get a break at all. If we get a winter, we'll probably get about maybe 2 months of slow beekeeping. And then after that, boom, the bees are back up and running again. So thank you, all my subscribers, for watching. Thank Paula for allowing me to video her and show her some things that she can do and help me with. And I know her goal is to have her own beehive, and I'll probably end up giving her one of my hives so she can get some free honey. I give her free honey anyway. You know how that goes, right? That's your baby sister. So You have to look out for her. So, you know what they say, you teach a fisherman how to fish, and every time he need a fish, he'll go fishing. But if you don't teach him, every time he needs a fish, he'll come find you, say, hey, I need a fish. So you get the drift. If I give her a beehive, hey, she has free honey and she knows how to keep bees. So thanks to all my subscribers. Without you, my channel would be a failure. So this is Rich from My Babies Apiaries. As always, to you, peace, love, joy, and happiness. You enjoy your bees and have a wonderful day.